Hi, it's Kevin May from PhocusWire in the TTE studio at TTE 2020. Joined, thankfully, by Simon Llanos, the marketing director for UK, Ireland, Nordics, and now the Netherlands. So
Absolutely.
Congratulations on adding the Netherlands to the mix. And you're from Klook, so thanks for joining us, Simon.
Thanks for having me.
Interesting times at Klook. We'll get the really super timely stuff out of the way. Coronavirus started in China in the Far East, where Klook was born. So Could you just give us your perspective on where things are at the moment with regards to how you're dealing with it, drop-offs, so you're seeing those kind of things?
Yeah, sure. I think as with any kind of business like ours, you would expect it to have an impact, certainly in the territories where unfortunately the virus is strong. And we have to be very, I think, sensitive to how we approach it, because it affects people much more than it affects us as a business, you know, from their lifestyles, livelihoods, etc. So our first priority, I think, as a company is towards the safety of our customers, the travelers, and then our staff as well, that are in the offices over there. But you know, it would be naive to think that it doesn't have an impact. I think certainly when airlines and people like that are starting to get a little bit concerned about sending people to the destinations as being very much in-destination experiences, start to feel that a little bit. So in terms of how we're dealing with it, we're mobilizing our customer service groups to a large degree, really, in terms of being able to deal with any queries that are coming in, cancellations, those types of things, handling them as best we can as and when they come in, really on a case-by-case basis, given that we're, I guess, a global company. Each territory that we operate is affected differently. So we kind of take it as so. Okay.
And how do you mitigate that as a bit? I know you've talked about the operational side of it. I mean, how are you thinking about the next kind of week, months, 3 months, or are you just seeing it on a kind of a day-by-day basis, as feels like almost everybody is?
Yeah, I think because it's so unpredictable, even the World Health Organization at the minute is not exactly sure to class it as a pandemic. You know, things are evolving day by day. So we're very much keeping an eye on the situation, looking at our metrics, looking at those of our peers, those of the market metrics, etc., that were coming. And we are planning, we're putting in strategic plans for long-term, short-term, medium-term. The trouble is, there's just so much that's unknown at the minute. So we're kind of just taking it as we go.
Okay, so you said, let's go back to other things now. So, you know, you said you're a global business now. You made a really big kind of big announcement, I guess, for one of a bigger phrase, that you were coming to Europe.
Yeah.
Which was interesting, not only from a journalist perspective, because you're going right up against your biggest competitor and Get Your Guide. So first of all, talk to us a little bit about, one, how it's been going in Europe, because you came in second to market almost. And kind of how does that kind of take us forward over the next year or so, given that you do have such strong competition? And we also need to mention people like Viator and Expedia as well. Already big markets with lots of players, right?
Yeah, I think the way that we look at it specifically is that that's a really positive sign, first of all, that there's lots of people in the market or interested in the market, even coming forward, the likes of Google, Airbnb, what those guys are thinking about, in terms of our space. We see that as a very positive sign. I think where we noticed ourselves, and wouldn't necessarily class a lot of the guys that you've spoken about really as competitors so much, as we are I think we have so many verticals involved in our business that it's not just T&A, it's not just food and beverage, it's not just hotels or stays for something along those lines. So we really span multiple verticals. And in terms of how it's going for us, I think that's really helped us begin the early kind of footholds, I think, into the European markets, that it isn't just T&A that we do. You know, we have connectivity with regards to Wi-Fi, rail infrastructure, and things like that we're bringing in as well. Really working on that one-stop shop for like an in-destination experience, if you like, which is pretty much unserved at the minute. And we think that that's a huge opportunity and a great way for us to grow. Certainly in Western markets, where perhaps the technology, I guess, with merchants and things like that isn't perhaps as well developed as we're seeing within APAC, certainly when it comes to mobile usage and things like that.
Talk to us a little bit about that then. So is that something that, what are you having to do to kind of counter that then? The fact that, you know, the market and the technology and the way consumers and the operators are using it is so different from there to here.
Yeah, for sure. I think, so if you look at 2019, for example, globally, I think about 75% of our bookings were made on mobile. Whereas within the UK for 2019, you sit, between 50 and 60%, and that's across mobile totally, not just our app. So people are using mobile web a lot more. What we notice is that about 90-95% of the purchase journeys involve mobile, but a lot of the conversions are actually taking place on desktop. And so we're trying to understand why that difference is.
That's interesting that it is 50% in the UK, because that would then imply that they're either taking their laptops with them when they're going to a trip, or they're doing a lot of their booking before they leave, which is very, very different to what the researchers said in the past. It's still a very late minute buy. It's once you're in destination, okay, let's go to the Eiffel Tower.
And I think that's the interesting part, and how we have, the benefit that we can bring there is because a lot of people are still doing the pre-booking. Certainly if you look at the UK market, for example, it's a lot of old school thinking in regards to the reliance on travel agents, booking on your laptop before you go, especially when the trip or the activity or something like that forms a significant part of your experience, maybe like an Orlando ticket or something. But then when they're booking in destination, they're typically still buying on the gate, buying through the reps in the hotels, those types of things. It's trying to educate people to, the mobile service that exists, such as ourselves now.
Okay, so but just on that, so you do see people booking well in advance then?
It depends really, again, because we have so many verticals involved in the platform there, be it rail, be it theme park tickets, all the way through to tours and activities. Depending on how much of a significant part of the trip it is, I would say, depends on how far in advance that they're booking.
Okay, so you're now in the US as well. So who do you see as your kind of competition there? Because in Europe it's a bit more obvious, it's the names that we've referenced. Who do you see as it is in the US?
I think competition is a difficult one. I think people in our space that we respect and pay attention to are always going to be the likes of Airbnb. We think they're doing some great things. Viator, clearly, as well as very much the kind of the do nothing mentality and the buying on the gate kind of mentality. So not even actual companies being our competitors. It's trying to educate the market, certainly in these Western markets, that facilities like ours exist, the one-stop shop, the multi-verticals with the transport and everything included.
Now, you said Google earlier. It's only in the last year or so, year and a half, that they have become a potential player in activities. I mean, what do you sense their motivation is? I know there's an obvious answer, but they always do things in a very different way to everybody else. What do you think they're going to do?
I think so. Again, we work very closely with Google, through our Asia relationships, and now moving that over into Europe as well. So it's great to get a lot of insight from those guys in terms of how they support us. And they clearly have, it almost feels sometimes like split motivation, because they still want the ad dollars and the Google tax that that we all pay them to be higher up in the rankings. But then similarly, they want to develop their product as well, so that they become more appropriate to their consumer in the same way that us as technology companies want to do. So in terms of what I think they're going to do, it comes down to being able to source information quickly, source relevant information quickly. They'll never be the actual, I think, provider or owner of that information. So it's important for us to continue to work with the likes of Google and be aware of those opportunities as they arise, and kind of work with them on it.
So, Turing Bird, which was their kind of test bed for tours and activities, was originally all going to be just about working with the likes of Klook and the other intermediaries, and work with OTAs to send them traffic down the funnel. But the ultimate goal really is for them to work directly with the suppliers, right? So that must be some degree of concern to you, is that over time, once they learn more about the market and the connectivity works, which is such an important part of tours and activities, they'll be like, okay, thanks, that was great when we were working with you, but now we can connect directly to the operators themselves.
I think we can't, I certainly can't say what the ultimate goal of Google is in that kind of situation. Certainly for the time being, it goes back to one of my earlier answers, we see it as a really positive sign around the opportunity in the market. I think 2020 we're predicted to be about 180 billion like USD or something. It's significant, and so I think that's a real positive sign, especially with the geopolitical climate and everything that's taking place at the minute, that those conversations are kind of still taking place.
Okay, and last of all then, Simon, I mean, we've heard a lot, certainly 2018 with the big acquisitions that happened, Booking Holdings getting into the game and TripAdvisor doing what it did with Boken, and there was this, at the time of the Boken acquisition, that was Steve Kaufer, the CEO of TripAdvisor, was talking about wanting to connect the industry. We're almost 2 years on from those big acquisitions. Where are we with connectivity to operators? Is it moved on significantly in those 2 years, do you sense, or is it still kind of in the bit of the Wild West, which is what a phrase that gets labelled on tours and activities an awful lot?
Yeah. I think it's definitely a haves and have-nots kind of situation that exists at the minute in terms of connectivity. It's either you're very well connected, you're not connected, be it API, all those kind of things that exist at the minute. But even then, the technology that might be in place that you would perceive as being connected or well connected is legacy technology as well, and it can often be a hindrance rather than a necessary benefit. I think one of the things that we're trying to do definitely with our merchant side of the company as well is to free up those opportunities there, so even the one-man bands can become an effective tour operator, digital innovation. We can put them onto the system very quickly using our merchant app, which allows them to generate QR codes, manage booking loads, etc. And that one-stop shop, because we see it as very much of a win-win scenario, whereby if we can get the best of the best customer experience from the merchants, from the operators, etc. on our platform, then we absolutely win because it benefits our customer and our potential service.
So lastly, Simon, I mean, there's been lots of talk over the previous years about technology standards in tours and activities, because there isn't a standard at the moment about how suppliers can connect to intermediaries or software vendors and into the likes of you. What's kind of your point of view on kind of the adoption and the creation of standards just to kind of make things a little bit more uniform?
Yeah, I think we would absolutely welcome that. And again, we would want to be involved, I think, in leading that as a key player in the industry. I think the difficulty comes into play with the variety in the types of product that a T&A company might offer. Whereas you look at something like flights and hotels, they're fairly standardized in terms of what they're able to offer, but tours and activities, attractions, everything that then goes into that package, there's so much variety that actually being able to create a standard would be incredibly difficult. If it could happen, that would be amazing, but super difficult.
Okay, Simon, Llanos, thanks very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.